What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Thomas, bringing you another edition of the Thomas Take, part 3 of today's show. UFC talk, UFC post-fight 213, UFC 213 post-fight, I should say. Also broke the news of Gegard Mousasi signing with Bellator MMA. My thoughts on that and much, much more. Tune into part 1 and part 2 of the Thomas Take on YouTube and the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page. I would very much appreciate it. I've had a lot of new followers on YouTube that have been tuning into the show, and I really want to say thank you for tuning in. So let's talk about some football. The magic world of Twitter created a poll in which it was said that who is the best UFC not UFC. Who was the best quarterback, as a bug just crawled on me. Who's the best quarterback in Buffalo Bills history? Sorry about that, guys. That was really gross. Who is the best quarterback in Buffalo Bills history? Obviously, Jim Kelly. Obviously, right? Number 2, a guy that, for whatever reason, is probably one of the most underappreciated football players ever, Jack Kemp. Led the Buffalo Bills to 2 back-to-back AFL titles. Had the NFL came into fruition a year earlier, had the letter been sent, the famous letter from Pete Rozelle to Lamar Hunt, or from Lamar Hunt to Pete Rozelle, just a little bit sooner, just a year sooner, the Buffalo Bills would have been representing the AFL in the first Super Bowl, and most diehard, old-school football pundits that are still alive from that era stated that nobody stacked up better against Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers than the Buffalo Bills, with Jack Kemp, Cookie Gilchrist, Mike Stratton on the defensive side of the ball, Jim Haslett, the real diehard, not Jim Haslett, I'm jumping in time. Just forgot his name. I said Jim Haslett, but I'm meaning to say somebody else. I'll think of it later. But realistically, a real team, a team that was led by a real leader in Jack Kemp, and he went on to do great things for this country in politics, and just a real American, just a real, you want to talk about the Hulk Hogan, I am a real American, fight for the right of every man. That was Jack Kemp, man. He went on the gridiron, he busted his tail for the Buffalo Bills, he played in some big games back in the day in the 60s, and kicked ass. Joe Ferguson obviously was a part of the Bills for a long time. He contributed to some not so good seasons, but he contributed to the Buffalo Bills much longer than the 5th ranked Ryan Fitzpatrick. I want to talk about this because I saw it littered on my Twitter feed of people just in shock that Ryan Fitzpatrick was rated the 5th best quarterback in Buffalo Bills history. And I mean, that is really sad. Let's just start off by saying that is very sad that the Bills have had such bad quarterbacks over the course of the last 20 years, since the Kelly era. Since Kelly retired, Todd Collins, obviously Doug Flutie, Rob Johnson, Drew Bledsoe, Kelly Holcomb, J.P. Lossman, Trent Edwards, E.J. Manuel, Kyle Orton, Kevin Cobb. I mean, I can go on and on. But I would say that the one that did have some success, some, very little, was Ryan Fitzpatrick. And this might come as a shock to most people, but it's not the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick is not the 5th best. It's the fact that over the course of a 60-year franchise, that he is even considered to be the 5th best. That is mind-blowing. The fact that the Bills haven't had 5 quarterbacks or one more quarterback that really contributed more to the Bills than Fitzpatrick did, that would knock him out of the top 5. Let's go through the statistics. The statistics state that Fitzpatrick played for the Bills 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012. Obviously, last 2 years of my high school, when I was back in high school, and the first 2 years of my college. So let's do the touchdown to interception ratio. 9 touchdowns, 10 picks in 2009. 23 touchdowns, 15 picks in 2010. 24 touchdowns, 23 picks in 2014. And then he went to Tennessee for a year, then Houston for a year, then the New York Jets. A journeyman quarterback. A quarterback that has started more than 13 games in 4 seasons. 4 of the last 6 seasons. He started more than 6, at least 12 to 16 games. At least 11 out of 16 games. 5 of the last 5 of the last 6 seasons. So definitely, a quarterback that is not the best. But a quarterback that outside of Fitzpatrick, I can't think of one quarterback that could be ranked 5th over Fitzpatrick. Jim Kelly, Jack Kemp, Joe Ferguson, Drew Bledsoe, maybe 4th. But Drew Bledsoe was on the Bills for maybe 2-3 years. He wasn't even a Buffalo Bills quarterback longer than Fitzpatrick was. So this countdown showed to me why the Buffalo Bills have had such a dysfunctional franchise, why they are such a dysfunctional franchise these last 20 years, and why they haven't made the playoffs in 17 years. Realistically, I'm not surprised when I see countdowns like this, countdowns of this nature. And I want to preface my statement by saying I cannot stand Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think he's terrible. I thought he was terrible when he was on the Bills. I thought he was terrible when he left the Bills. I laughed my butt off when Fitzpatrick went to the New York Jets. The first year, everybody was saying how great he was. No, he wasn't that great. The Buffalo Bills ate him alive with Rex Ryan's defense that we all know had a lot of problems. Was not a good quarterback, and that's why he has played for as many teams as he's played. A decent backup, a damn good backup, but not a starter. Joe Ferguson, let's talk about him. 1973 to 1984, quarterback of the Buffalo Bills for quite some time. 1975, Joe Ferguson tied Fran Tarkington for the NFL lead with 25 touchdown passes, compiled a passer rating of 81.3. Ferguson also surpassed 20 touchdown passes in 3 other seasons, 1980, 81, and 83. So 20 touchdowns back then, back in that day, was a pretty good statistic. It's definitely, it should be noted that Ferguson placed in the top 10 in pass attempts 5 times, completions and passing yards 4 times, touchdowns 6 times, passing touchdowns 6 times, and yards per pass 3 times. At one time, he shared with Ron Jaworski the NFL record for most consecutive starts by a quarterback with 107 until he was replaced by Joe Dufek on September 30th, 1984. Went to 4 postseason games, went 1-3. Not great, but he had a decent career. So 3, Jim Kelly, Jack Kemp, Joe Ferguson. Drew Bledsoe I would only put in there at 4 over Fitzpatrick because he should have been on the Bills longer than he was. He was there for too short of a time. They let the offensive line fall apart, and Bledsoe was gone far too soon. They threw in J.P. Lossman coming off a broken leg, and that was a disaster, a true and utter disaster. Complete mistake. Drew Bledsoe was only here 3 years. I understand that. But let's compile the stats. The first year Drew Bledsoe was here, he broke Buffalo Bills passing yard records. 4,359 yards. You can bet your ass no other Bills quarterback has thrown for that many yards since then, outside of the number 5 ranked Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, this is my ranking. I didn't really look at the ranking of the Buffalo Bills quarterbacks from the actual listing. But this is how I would rank it. 24 touchdowns, 15 interceptions in 2002. The Bills had a decent year that year. 2003, 11 touchdowns, 12 picks, not so good. Obviously, that was a really, really bad year. 2004, 20 touchdowns, 16 picks. And then you go to the year that he spent in Dallas. He had 3,639 yards, 23 TDs, 17 interceptions. Yards per year for Buffalo, 4,359, as I mentioned, 2,860, 2,932. So outside of that first year where he really balled out for the Bills, he almost had 3,000 yards each year. You look at where he was at in terms of his statistics for his career, he's one of the better passing quarterbacks of all time. In 2002, his first season in Buffalo, he set single-season records for yards, attempts, completions on an offense that had 7 other franchise records. I mean, the single season of offensive football that the Bills have had in previous years up until now, it hasn't been matched. Bledsoe was the last quarterback to have led the Buffalo Bills to a winning season until Kyle Orton did so in 2014. He's 5th all-time in completions, 7th in passing yards, and 13th in touchdown passes. He wasn't on the Bills for long. He probably should have finished his career as a Buffalo Bill, realistically. He should have finished his career as a Bill. Probably 5 years as a Bill rather than 3. 2 more years, plays in Dallas. Those last 2 years of his career, he should have been in the Bills. Should have been on the Bills. Had they not let that offensive line fall apart, had they realistically kept him for the long haul, treated him right, built around him. I know he was slow. I know he wasn't the most mobile quarterback, but damn could he throw. He had a pretty ball. He was a great passer. And say what you want about Drew Bledsoe, but being replaced by Tom Brady and everything like that, when Tom Brady got hurt for that AFC Championship game, 2001, versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, go back and watch that. What a story that was. Drew Bledsoe came in, he lit the world on fire. He lit up the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh and led the Patriots to the Super Bowl. Had he not played well, had he just been a lame duck and played really bad in that game, virtually that was the game of his career where he really had to prove his worth in that game. So other teams, the other 31 teams around the league thought to themselves, man, this guy's still got a little bit left. And I was really happy when the Bills got Drew Bledsoe. I thought that Drew Bledsoe was going to be a real big deal here, and in 2002 I was right. And in 2003, did he have a great year? No. 2004, he did decent. Obviously, we started the season that year, I believe, 0-4. They finished 9-7, and they lost to the third-string Steelers. I don't think that would have happened had then GM Tom Donahoe not let the team just completely fall apart. Trading guys away like Peerless Price, drafting guys like Willis McGahee on his rookie year where they knew he wouldn't play a single down. They knew that they didn't need a running back. But in hindsight, Willis McGahee was actually what they needed because Travis Henry was on his way out. It's always one thing. The Bills are always, the last 17 years, the Bills have always prepared themselves for a move that has yet to happen of a player leaving. And even as most recently as this year with Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore walks, and no, I wasn't his biggest fan, but I didn't want to have to invest a first-round pick in yet another corner. They've done that already. They did that in 2008 with Otis McKelvin. They did that in 2011, I believe. Maybe 2012 with Stephon Gilmore. And they're doing it in 2017 with Tre'Davious White. And this is nothing against Tre'Davious White. I think he's going to be a great player. He's a great kid, smart, very smart, highly respected in certain, the college circles. But am I wrong? No, I'm not. You can't win. You can't build a winning team by continuing to replace the players that you've already lost. Like literally a wheel of perpetual motion of just replacing players that you have just lost. When you had just gotten them off, basically letting players go after the rookie contracts are over. So is Ryan Fitzpatrick worthy of the 5th ranking? Sadly, yes. Sadly, he is. Because the Bills haven't had anybody better besides the 4 people ranked above him. Take care, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.